right. Well, today on That's Classic, we have another fun one, which I always say, but we really do. Today we have none other than the host of the Newlywed Game. And when I say the host, I mean, my gosh, he was the host for many years and many episodes, as well as I have to say, you're going to be really surprised at his influence on the music scene as well. But we have none other than Bob Eubanks. So, Bob, thank you so much for being here today.
Hey, thank you. I got up
Oh.
early to be with you. What time is it? 11 o'clock.
Well, thanks a bunch for being on. Well, why don't we get started right away? I'm curious. First of all, how did the why don't we talk about the Newlywed Game, and then I'd love to get into some of this other stuff. But how did it come about in the first place that you even ended up being the host?
I was playing a basketball game with our radio station, and we would get record guys to play with us. And Bobby Boris Pickett was there, and I said, well, "You're getting a lot of publicity. Well, who you signed with?" And he said, "Well, Noel Rubeloff." And my friend Charlie O'Donnell said, "You can't sign with Noel Rubeloff. He only takes stars." So I bet him $5 I could sign. And I went to see Noel Rubeloff, and Rubeloff said, "You know what? Chuck Barris has got a new show on. He's got the dating game, but he's got a new show he wants to sell, and he's looking for a host." And well, I'd never hosted a game show in my life, but I went over there, and we did some rehearsing and all of that, and they liked what I did. So they said, "You got it." But then we had to show it to the big guys in New York, and they flew out. And we just did an audition for them. No cameras, just lights. Couple number one was an unknown comedian named Dom DeLuise and his wife, Carol.
Wow.
What sold the Newlywed Game? And this is the truth now. Television was pretty quiet, but down at the end, couple number four was a cute little girl. I said, "What's your favorite nickname for your husband?" And she said, "Numbnuts." And the ABC guys got up and bought the show without a pilot.
That's hysterical. But
hey, I'll tell you another
please.
Newlywed story. The first day we went on to shoot the show, I'm standing in my dressing room, and you got to know, I've never hosted a game show. And I said, "God, you got to help me. I don't know what I'm doing."
Yeah.
There was a knock on my dressing room door. And I opened the door, and here stands two guys in suits. And I immediately flash ABC's here to say, "Good luck, Bob." I said, "Hi there." He said, "Bob?" I said, "Yep." He says, "You're hereby ordered to appear before the United States government anti-payola committee, and you damn sure better be there."
What?
I was served a felony subpoena 30 seconds before I went out to do my first Newlywed Game.
Oh my gosh.
The payola thing that was going on, disc jockeys taking money to pay records, but I hadn't done that. They eventually canceled the thing. But when I went out for the first one, there I was, and I had that subpoena in my pocket. And Chuck Barris, the producer, came to me afterwards. He said, "Bobby," he said, "we got to talk." I said, "What's the matter?" He said, "You've just done something I've never seen anybody do before." I said, "What did I do, man?" He said, "You went a half hour without blinking." But we did well, and the show took off.
Do you, by the way, I know you mentioned, well, there's a couple things. First, you mentioned Chuck Barris. There was that whole thing about, Chuck Barris was in the CIA and all that.
Yeah.
Do you think do you think there's truth, or do you think that's a bunch of BS?
There's no truth. I mean, you think the host of the Gong Show would be a member of the CIA? Come on, no. But he was a good guy.
Yeah.
And he was very supportive of me. And I was, I ended up doing the show off and on for 5 decades.
Yeah, literally. Yeah. Yeah. Well, he seems like he was a tremendously creative guy too.
He was. Yeah. An unusual gentleman, but he was a good guy. I mean, the first time I walked into his office, there was a urinal on the wall, and it was one of those things.
Wow. Wow. Did you mentioned Dom DeLuise was in the the original when you went to try out for the hosting? Was he completely unknown at that time? Was he just like a normal guy on the street or what?
I no, he was known a bit, I think, but I'm not sure. But he was known, and but we never put celebs on the show
Hmm.
because celebrities can't stand for someone else to be funny.
Wow.
Uh, and I produced Buddy Hackett's You Bet Your Life. He was the host, and he would bring the contestants to tears, for crying out loud, if they were funnier than he was.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny because he was a hysterical guy, Buddy. I mean, when you
Oh
saw him.
yeah, he was a character though. You know, uh, well, I got a lot of Buddy Hackett stories.
Well, tell me. We
Okay,
got a minute here. Tell me.
let's see. Buddy Hackett couldn't stand anybody to smoke, and it always had to be real cold in the facility because he said laughs rise and you can't hear them. But he was playing the Sahara one time in Vegas, and there was a guy in the front row smoking, and Hackett stopped. He said, "Hey, jerk, put that cigarette out." And the
Wow.
guy said, "It's my cigarette. I'm not going to." He said, "You better put that." Long story short, that was the president of U.S. Rubber, and Hackett had to find another casino to play in.
Wow. Wow, that's wild. Well, obviously he went on. He still had a great career, no doubt about it. What Bob, what do you think it was? I had read that you did 20, and I could be wrong on this. If I am, let me know. But I heard that you had done 2,195 episodes of the Newlywed Game. What was it about the show that you think it had the longevity that it did?
I think that people like to watch other people laugh and have fun. And I think here again, I learned how to make people talk.
Hmm.
I learned that people don't want to know about you, they want you to know about them.
Hmm.
And when I would get a funny answer, I would immediately look at the other three couples and I could tell where my next funny answer was coming from. And people just related to the show. I mean, here were ordinary people being funny, and people loved it. But I learned how to make them talk.
Yeah, interesting. There's that famous line, obviously, and I know your book is even called it's in the book, Bob. So, there was that famous, obviously,
Yeah,
moment
well,
in the Newlywed Game. How many of those quote unquote, like let's say bordering on inappropriate moments, would come up in the show? Was it common or not?
no, it wasn't too common, but uh, well, I'll tell you the story. I asked the lady, "Where's the strangest, most unusual place the two of you have ever made whoopee?" And she said, and she used the A word. And
Oh
I said,
God.
"No, no, no, no. Oh, you can't say that. I'm looking for a location." Oh, so anyway, everybody thought that she said in the B, but
Right.
it wasn't. It was in the A.
Oh my
And
gosh.
yeah. So when they did the movie Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, the Chuck Barris, they
Right.
called her and they said, "Olga," and she lived way up in Pennsylvania. They said, "We're going to put that clip in the movie." She says, "Don't, please don't. I'm a grandmother." "Well, it's worth $5,000. You go right ahead and put it in." And so it's in.
That's hysterical. Did you, when you were on the show and someone would make a comment like that, was it hard for you to kind of like hold? I mean,
Oh
I mean,
yeah, yeah. I would say, "Wait a minute, you can't say that, dude. What are you talking about?"
oh,
One time I got a call from a lady, and she said, "I saw my husband on the Newlywed Game with some woman. Do you have any idea who that is?" This jerk had faked the marriage license and went on the air with his mistress. Talk about stupid.
oh, I mean, seriously, you gotta be kidding me. Wow, those are, I can't, I mean, seriously, you can't write that, I
Oh,
mean,
you can't. What's your husband's favorite rodent? "I don't know what a rodent is." "Well, what's it?" "Well, I guess it's his saxophone." That kind of stuff.
I just love that. I just love that. So when you went up every day, you've got all these episodes. Did you always feel like I have no idea what's going to come up today, type of thing? Was it
Oh
always
yeah,
fresh?
we would shoot 5 shows a day for 35 days. That would give us 35 weeks, and they would rerun half of those.
Wow.
And so, I show up at 5 o'clock. We play Liar's Poker till 6. I go into makeup. We talk about the couples. I do the show. Bam, that's the way it was. It was wonderful.
How much of a I guess of a briefing did you have on who these couples were? Like, what would they tell you?
Not much of a briefing, not much at all, because they would tell me that, well, this guy's kind of funny. This guy, da, 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 da. The writers would tell me, but I didn't have much briefing. I went out there in the first round of questions. I could kind of pick who's going to be funny and who wasn't going to be funny. So it was all right.
Did you do because I got I watched the show a million times. Did you if you felt really loose to me, like you felt like, yeah, you had your card, but I felt like you were ad-libbing at times, like they gave you a little freedom.
Oh yeah, I had full on. All I had to do is ask the questions, and then I could say whatever the heck I wanted to after that. And I learned. I just learned how to make people react, and how to make people talk, and how to make people feel smart but really do funny things. And, I learned a great deal, and I'm very blessed.
Wow. Did were there any moments, and I'm sure I know there's a ton of episodes here, but outside of what we've discussed, are there any other moments from the show, either in front of the camera or behind the camera, that kind of stand out for you as like kind of interesting moments that happened in all that time?
Oh, I don't think so. I mean, there's a lot of funny things that happened for sure, but I'm trying to think of.
Sure,
it's been a long time.
No, I know. It's fine. Yeah.
And the other show that I did, Card Sharks.
Yeah, I remember.
That was a fun show for me to do, and but I did Newlywed Game, and Mark Goodson, who owned Card Sharks, hated Chuck Barris, so he wouldn't even look at me, Goodson. Huh. And one day I'm at the airport, and I run into his attorney, and I say, "What's going on with the guy? He won't even talk to me." Anyway, long story short, I went over, had an audition, and I got Card Sharks, and that was a fun show to do. There were 2 models on the show, Lacey Pemberton and Sue Anna Williams. And Lacey Pemberton, by the way, the brunette model, is the person who picks all of the contestants on The Bachelor and The Bachelorette, and has for years.
Wow.
And Goodson had a crush on her, boy, but she got married, so he fired her.
Oh my God.
She went to Gloria Allred, and he hired her back.
Yeah. For some reason, he brought her right back. Oh, that's hysterical. So what would you say was the biggest difference between working on Card Sharks and working on Newlywed Game, as far as the overall vibe on the set?
Well, with Card Sharks, if the contestants were kind of boring, I had a game to play with the cards and everything, so I could keep it going that way. But here again, I happen to believe that, and forgive me for this one, folks, that actors and comedians, I don't think are as good. Steve Harvey is an example. He is wonderful. Steve Harvey, I think, is wonderful.
I agree with you.
I think that actors and comedians have a rough time with anybody being funny. I remember I did a thing at the Hollywood Palladium one time, and there were 4 comedians, Bob Hope being one of them, and I went into the dressing room, and they're all sitting there. And it was, "Hey, did you hear the one about?" "Yeah, I heard that one." And then, "Well, what about?" "Oh, yeah, I heard that one too." I mean, they couldn't stand for anybody else to be funny,
Wow.
So that's why I think that, and I think Steve Harvey does a wonderful job. And I even think that the guy that does America's Funniest Home Video, I think he is really good also. But there's the good. Yeah, I had fun.
Yeah. Did you obviously you're famous for saying "making whoopee." Did you come up with that tagline?
Yeah, they wanted me to say "make love," and I wouldn't do it, because I didn't think you should have to explain that to your children until you were ready to do so. So Sinatra had a hit record at that time called Making Whoopee. I said, I'll say Whoopee. So Whoopee became a 4-letter word right there.
How interesting, because it's really famous. I mean, people still, you say Making Whoopee, they know, they think of you, they think of Newlywed Game, you know?
Yep.
Yeah. Now you hosted, you're the only game show host I saw that has hosted 6 consecutive decades. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I was very honored. TV Guide named me one of the top 5 of all time. But look at Sajak. He's been doing that a long time now.
He has.
And he's a good guy, and he does a good job. But I feel very honored to be part of that in the business. But then on the other side, I was in the music business. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. You were at KRLA, and I thought this was rather funny, by the way. I saw you in an interview, and you said, you know what? I wasn't really a great DJ. And I was like, why did you feel you weren't a great DJ?
Oh, because I was a time and temperature guy. Hey, it's 20 minutes after 4, 64 degrees at KRLA, and here they are, the Righteous Brothers. And that didn't take much ability. But I was there with the big guys like Casey Kasem and Dave Hall and those, and I knew I had to make myself a little more important than going in and doing 3 hours. So there was a nightclub in New York called the Peppermint Lounge.
Yeah.
Joey D and the Starlighters. By the way, Joe Pesci was the guitar player in that group.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
Really?
They had a hit record called the Peppermint Twist.
Wow.
And so there was no place in Southern California for kids to go and dance without booze.
Wow.
So I decided to open the Cinnamon Cinder. And I had a little band called the Pastel Six, and I would book talent every Wednesday night. And we ended up with 4 of them eventually. But that made me a little more important at the radio station to keep my job.
Yeah, but you also, I looked that up as well. Cinnamon Cinder. I mean, I think people out there are thinking, oh, that's cool. You had this club with music. You didn't just have a club with music. You had a club with major talent. I mean, I saw who was on that lineup. Righteous Brothers, Stevie Wonder. You had the
Ike and Tina.
Drifters, the Shirelles. Come on.
Yeah. I was playing ping pong with Chuck Barris once. And he whipped my butt. And I said, damn, where'd you learn to do this, man? He said, it's all I did while I was in prison was play ping pong.
Wow.
But he was a strange one because you had to pay him in cash. You had to pay him before he went on the stage. But Ike and Tina, just a whole bunch of them. But that helped open the door when the Beatles came along too.
Well, before we get to the Beatles, tell me this. You can't throw Ike and Tina out there like that, so casual. What were Ike and Tina like at that time to work with?
They were, the cops would come in and make sure nobody was dirty dancing or nobody on the stage. And they were wonderful. I went to Tina. I said, do me a favor, sweetheart. I said, don't wiggle quite so much.
Wow.
And so she said, okay. But then she'd get out there and she'd catch my attention and she'd turn it on.
Wow.
Then, Stevie Wonder, he went on in Long Beach at 9 o'clock, did an hour, got in a car, and drove up to North Hollywood to do the second show same night.
Wow.
And my secretary was driving him, and she got in a little accident. And Stevie said, just tell Bob that I was driving, okay? I said, all right.
What about the Righteous Brothers, by the way? I mean, obviously a classic to this day. What they like?
And Bill Medley is still a good friend of mine. He really is. But the Righteous Brothers, they were wonderful, and they got it done. They did everything right, and I was a big Righteous Brother fan, believe me.
Oh yeah, they were smooth. I saw him only a few years back in Las Vegas, and he still has it. Yeah.
Well, he's got a new, Bobby passed away.
Right.
He's got a new partner there in Vegas, But Bill's a great guy. I really like him.
Wow. What about other ones that I saw that you had? Well, actually, let's talk about the Beatles. We'll go there because I know the Beatles fans are going, would you just talk about it already? So tell me this. So you are known as the person that brought the Beatles to the West Coast, the first concert. How did all of that come about? Like, how did it even start in the first place?
When they did the Ed Sullivan show, as I said, 75 million people watched. They announced they were going to tour, signed with an agency, and the agency went to their regular promoters and he turned them down. And so I was buying talent at the Cinnamon Cinders. And so I was a talent buyer, and I was also a disc jockey at the hot new station. So I had both of these going for me, and I had never produced a concert in my life.
My gosh.
So I went to them. I said, I want them. And anyway, long story short, because of that. But then I had a problem because when they said, okay, you got them, I didn't have $25,000. Good God.
Oh my God, that's a lot of money. Even, I mean, back then, that's a lot of money.
Well, I had a business partner of mine. We owned a home there in Calabasas. And I went to the Security Bank and I said, I want to borrow $25,000. The guy said, what do you want it for? I said, I want to put the Beatles in the Hollywood Bowl. He says, get out of here. He literally kicked me out. So I went to a little storefront bank, Trans World Bank. And I walked in and they had just repoed a motorcycle that was leaking oil all over the floor. But the manager, Liz Miller, her son was a Beatle fan. And she says, okay, I'll loan it to you.
Oh my God.
So I borrowed 25 on the house and presented the Beatles. But the interesting thing about it, that was 64. After I paid the Beatles, after I did all of security and all of that, I ended up with $4,000 and I had a partner. So I ended up with $2,000. And I swore I would never do it again, but I did.
Oh, yeah. No kidding. What? Tell me this. I mean, literally, it's your first concert. It's the Beatles, the biggest band in the world. How did you put it together? Like, how do you even produce the show?
Well, it was very difficult. And, I hear again, I didn't know what I was doing, but you see, I happen to believe that the manager, Brian Epstein, cost the Beatles a huge amount of money. Really? Because they had no merchandise. And there are acts that go out now just with the merchandise. And all 3 years, the most he would let me charge was $7 top price. Now, you got to know something. Paul McCartney played the SoFi Stadium not too long ago, and I heard there was some $4,000 front row seats. So
yeah, right.
Yeah. So anyway, but I put it all together, and I didn't know what I was doing. I remember the night of this show, I was walking up the driveway of the bowl, and a bus comes in full of marshals. I said, what are you guys doing here? He said, well, we're here to protect the homes up on the hill. I said, oh, good. I said, so who's paying for you? He said, you are. Huh? But it was, it was an exciting time. And we had to come up with a lot of different things. And I've got a lot of Beatles stories, I'll tell you.
Well, can you tell me a couple of Beatles stories?
Yeah. The Beatles, we got the Beatles into the Hollywood Bowl, and Debbie Reynolds, the actress, walked up to me, and she had a security guard with her. I said, hi there. She said, I'd like to meet the Beatles. I said, well, I'm sure that won't be a problem. Come with me. So I go backstage and I knock on John's door, open the door, and there he is sitting with Lauren Bacall.
Oh my gosh.
And I said, John, Debbie Reynolds is out here and wants to meet you. And he looked at Lauren Bacall, and Bacall said, He says, I don't want to meet her. I said, John, she loves you, man.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Uh,
What were
and they
they
were very
like?
demanding. They wanted clean towels and a good sound system. I thought that was kind of pushy.
That's all they asked for, really.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Well,
wow.
and bless their hearts, they always had a segregation clause in their contract. They would not appear before an audience that was segregated.
Wow,
And
no kidding.
yeah, I thought that was really nice too.
Yeah.
And the third year, they were really demanding. They wanted a case of Dr. Pepper.
So
Uh,
did you, as far as personalities at that time, were they just like, I mean, I realize he was there with Lauren Bacall, but in general, were they pretty just nice guys, or what was the feeling?
Paul McCartney was always wonderful. Ringo and George, they were there. But John and I didn't get along very well. And every time I'd ask the manager, Brian Epstein, a question, he said, well, you got to ask John. You got to ask John.
Really?
And so I got the impression then that John was sort of the leader of the group, but I'm not sure. That was 64.
Sure, sure. Well, you brought him back again, right? In 65?
65, they came back to me, even though I said I'd never do it again.
Right.
65, I said, sure, but I want 2 nights, period, because they would only do 1 night the first year.
Mm-hmm.
And I want 2 nights, and they said, okay. So I played them I put him a flat fee on the second year. But the thing was that the Beatles made KRLA #1. And even though I only made $2,000 the first year, they made KRLA #1. So I got smart. I went to KRLA and I said, why don't we make it KRLA and Bob Eubanks present the Beatles? And they said, okay, what do you want? I was making $12,500. I said, I want $15,000. I want a 5-day work week, and I want $100,000. And they said, okay.
Did you about pass out when you walked outside?
Yep. So the second, third year, I got $100,000.
Wow. Wow.
I'll tell you,
that's quite a story.
I'll tell you a story. When they went to Vegas and they opened the Love show in Vegas.
Yeah, I remember.
That the Love album went to gold. And the guy walked up to me and said, have you heard the Love album? I said, no. He said, well, you're on it. I said, I am? He said, yeah. So I bought it. And the only place I was on it, I said 5 words. Here they are, the Beatles. I made more money on those 5 words than I made on all 3 of the Beatle concerts.
Oh my gosh, really? Now,
Yep.
was that because he told you that, or were they going to pay you anyway?
No, they weren't going to pay me anyway. Yeah, I'm glad he told me.
Wow, that's a biggie that somebody told you that. That's huge.
Not getting that.
Wow, that is really amazing. So then the other big band that I heard about was the Stones, the Rolling Stones.
Yeah, I did so well with the Beatles. The whole English migration came over, and I was fortunate they would come to me. And the first year I did the Stones, I paid them $4,500 at Long Beach Auditorium. And I loved their music. But Jagger was difficult. He was really difficult. And the second year, I paid him $25,000, again, Long Beach, but a different auditorium.
Yeah.
And I said, look, you guys, I want you to, as soon as you're done, put your instruments down and get out of here, because I got a car waiting for you. And that was always the biggest problem, getting the acts out.
Yeah.
So they were done, and the 4 members of the band ran out. But Jagger, he kind of hung around, waving to people and all of that. Oh. And by the time he got in the car was a mound of girls.
Oh my gosh.
And the Stones were laying on their back with their feet against the roof so it wouldn't cave in.
Oh my gosh.
And I saw a little girl get her foot run over, and she still was yelling and screaming.
Oh my gosh. Seriously.
I'll tell you a funny story. Dave Clark 5.
Yeah.
I did Dave Clark 5, and I said, look, guys, do me a favor. When you're done, put your instruments down. I've got I've got a car out there with a motorcycle escort to take you right out of here. And they said, okay.
Yeah.
And bam, they did. They ran out and they jumped in the car. And the motorcycle officer go, wouldn't start. So I said, get out of here. Well, there's still a girl hanging on the top. So they went up into the residential area. It was very close. And they heard the girl banging and everything. So the guy stops and the driver gets out to take the girl off the top. And there's a guy walking his dog. He thinks the guy is molesting the girl. He walked up and cold cocked the girl.
Oh my God.
I said, no. And then here comes a motorcycle cop. Anyway.
Unbelievable.
One time I had a Herman and the Hermits.
Oh my gosh, they were huge.
In order to get them, I had to buy the opening act, and I didn't want to buy them. They're too expensive, but I had to. So we're out at Anaheim, and I see the opening act come in, and there's some young girls, and they go into the dressing room, and I walk in there, and there's some underage girl. I said, out, get out. So this is the opening act. So we got him out of it. And pretty soon I see the opening act drummer pulling his drum, and it's making grooves in the floor. And I walk up and I kick the top, and there's a girl curled up in there.
Oh my gosh.
I said, you guys will never work for me again. He said, you wanker, you're right. We won't work for you again. That was Keith Moon of The Who.
Oh, wow. Even then they had the reputation like crazy. Wow. Oh my God. I love that story. Now, the other acts that I saw were Barry Manilow. I saw the Supremes, Elton John, Bob Dylan.
Okay. Barry Manilow and Elton John were the two most difficult acts I ever worked with.
Really? Why is that?
Well, first of all, Manilow made me remove 315 people behind the stage while he made a 10-second walk, because he didn't want anybody to see him walk up on the stage.
Oh my gosh.
And Elton John, I had 8,000 people in Las Vegas. And a guy comes up and he says, we have a problem. I said, what's your problem? He said, Elton hates cops, and he won't come out of the dressing room if he sees one in a uniform. I said, for God's sake. So I went to the Las Vegas police people. I said, do me a favor, just disappear till I get this jerk on stage. And I got him on stage. But when he came off, I had 5 uniforms waiting for him at the bottom of the steps,
Oh my gosh. Oh my
God. They were difficult. Those two, Manilow and Elton, were difficult.
Wow.
Dylan was okay. But with Bob Dylan at the Hollywood Bowl, it's the first time I ever saw hippies.
Oh,
and
wow.
he had a hit record at the time. Anyway, Like a Rolling Stone.
Yeah, Like a Rolling Stone. I figured.
He had a hit record Like a Rolling Stone. And so he went out and he played the first half, and they said, sing like a Rolling Stone. He says, oh man, I didn't bring a G harmonica. Well, about 10 of them hit the stage, And so he picked it up and he played it. So he said, we're going to take a 10-minute break. So he goes off the stage. Pretty soon he comes back and he's got an electric guitar. Now, this was the beginning of the whole hippie thing.
Yeah.
And 4,000 people walked out when he picked up the electric guitar.
Oh my gosh. Wow. What about the Supremes, by the way?
They were fine. I had no problem with Supremes. I really didn't, But I got out of the rock and roll business in 1971, and because I was raised with country music.
Yeah, I was wondering about that tie-in. Why you switched like that?
Well, the rock and roll business was driving me crazy, and so I went to Merle Haggard, and I introduced myself and told him what I wanted to do. I ended up producing his concerts for 10 years. Everywhere he went, I went, and we never had a crossword. He was wonderful.
Wow.
He had some interesting things that he would do, but nevertheless, and then my success with Haggard helped me sign Dolly Parton and Barbara Mandrell to management.
Wow.
And George Jones and Tammy Wynette. I tell you, they took George Jones' car and his driver's license away from him in Nashville.
Mm.
And but because he was drinking.
Yeah, yeah.
So
he had a huge drinking problem.
Oh, did he ever? Well, he got arrested on the turnpike going to Nashville to get a drink.
Wow.
On his lawnmower.
Oh, geez. Was he past the fact that he obviously had a very strong drinking problem? Was he hard to work with?
No, he was wonderful. Jones was great. The country guys were really good, you know, and I enjoyed it very much. But I after 10 years, I decided I was just going to stay in television.
I got you. By the way, with Dolly, what was Dolly like at that time? Because I mean, you were kind of
the biggest mistake ever made in my career. Dolly came to me after 2 years and she says, Bob, she says, I've got so much pressure because the guys in Nashville, because I have a West Coast manager and they were giving her all kinds of trouble. I said, I understand, sweetheart, I really do. So we parted ways. Wow. And a year later, I got a call and Dolly's at the Beverly Hills Hotel. And she said, I'd like to have a meeting. So I went to meet with her and she says, will you manage me again?
Wow.
And I said, hon, I've got so many concerts and so many television things going on. I just don't have enough time. That was 10% of 600 million I just gave away.
Oh my gosh. I mean,
but
seriously.
She was wonderful. She's a wonderful human being. She really is.
Wow. Wow. That's pretty cool. Did, I was trying to think, you also said Barbara Mandrell, which I always think of Barbara Mandrell and the Mandrell sisters. Did you, was she always seems so sweet. Is that how she was?
Sweet. And, you know, and Barbara, Dolly could write music like gangbusters, but Barbara didn't write, but she could play 5 different instruments.
Wow.
And whenever they'd go out in concert, the father would be on stage with her, Herbie, and then her sister would be playing drums. And wow. But she was really a sweetheart. I really enjoyed working with her. I was very fortunate.
Did you leave the I guess we'll say the rock and roll scene to go to country? Did you have a specific reason for that? Because you kind of insinuated there was a bit of a shift going on there. Yeah,
I was just, I was just tired of the baloney that was going on, and I ended up selling the company to Filmways and got out of the business. But interestingly enough, a couple of years later, I went back to the 2 partners I had and said, hey, let's do it again. And they didn't want to know about me.
Oh, wow.
So it's okay. It's all right.
It worked out well. You did fantastic in the country scene. Now, I think another thing that I think that'll surprise a lot of people. 2, the other side of the coin, you're a cowboy. I mean, that's something that really, I'll be honest with you, that might have been the biggest thing that surprised me, because I always think of you in that suit, the guy hosting, whatever. But you were like, you're part of the, what is it, the Rodeo Cowboy Association or whatever?
Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association. Yeah. I'm a lifetime member. Well, you see, the theory I have in the world is that you take what you know how to do and apply it in other areas. And I had my first horse when I was 11 years old. And I learned all about horses and all of that. And then later on, I became a contestant in the rodeos. If my kids had to live off what I won, they would have starved to death. But nevertheless, I became a rodeo cowboy and I competed in rodeos. Wow. And then they came to me and they said, how would you like to do the commentary for the national finals? I said, yeah. So wow. I ended up doing that. Then when the Rose Parade and the Christmas Parade came along, I was able to take my horse knowledge and apply it to the parades and such. So, and I have great stories there. One year, Roy Rogers was the Grand Marshal, and he was sitting up in the back of a convertible, he and Dale Evans.
Yeah, totally.
And Roy forgot to go to the bathroom before he started. And So there's no place to stop, so he peed in his boot.
Jeez. Oh my God, that's classic. I mean,
Yeah.
literally. What other, I guess, grand marshals were there during that time that you were doing it?
Well, Gene Autry.
Oh, yeah.
And, I'm trying to think who else. Then there used to be a guy named Casey Tibbs. And Casey Tibbs was a world's champion saddle bronc rider, And when President Ford was president, Casey and Stephen Ford became friends because Stephen wanted to be a cowboy too.
Oh, wow.
And so they were up in North Dakota somewhere, and they were going to go gather up cattle, but Stephen had to have a Secret Service agent with him. And after the first day out, the guy was so sore, right? He says, "Stephen, I'm so sore, I can't stand it. I just can't stand it. I can't do it." He said, "It's all right." So Casey and Stephen go up over the hill, pull out a rifle and fire it a couple of times. Steve lays across the saddle like he's been shot, and Casey and the poor Secret Service guy, "You got to tell them, you got to help me."
That's terrible.
I'm going to do a podcast, short stories about big people.
Oh, wow.
And I'm looking forward to it because I've got so many stories.
I love the title. Love it.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been doing an article in the magazine for several years, short stories about big people. But I just think it's fun.
Oh, I think it's terrific. My gosh, that's pretty cool. You, by the way, another kind of like offshoot, you did Home Alone 2, I saw. Is that correct? What the heck?
Yeah, I still get residuals.
Like?
I still get residuals from it sometime. Well, I got one the other day for 76 cents. Now, the stamp costs more than that.
Right. How was your experience being on that set?
Hey, I don't even remember. All I know that it was fun.
It was fun to do it. Did you enjoy, by the way, doing the pageants? I mean, I know going way back, you did like Miss Teen America or something like that. You've done Miss California. Did you enjoy doing the pageants?
Yeah, I did it. There were Guy Rex. They were the two guys that produced those pageants. Mm-hmm. And it was fun. Made a little money. Yeah, it was fun to do.
Right. There was one I meant to ask you about, by the way, with the Cinnamon Cinder that really, I was surprised. It had to be pretty early in their career, was Sonny and Cher. I saw had performed there.
Well, I'll tell you, when I was a disc jockey at KRLA, Sonny was a record promoter. He worked for the record companies. He'd go out and try to get disc jockeys to play and stuff. And he would bring this little brunette with him, and she would just sit there and look.
Wow.
And come to find out, that little brunette was Cher.
Wow.
And they went on to make music. Yeah.
And is that how you ended up booking him at Cinnamon Cinder?
I swear to God, I don't remember booking him at the Cinnamon Cinder.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, they listed him in there, but maybe that was just the tie-in as well. Who knows?
It may have been. It may have been. Yeah.
So what? I guess we'll kind of come to start wrapping it up for you. But you have your book. It's in the. Where can people get your book now?
If you go online to my website, just go online, Bob Eubanks. You can get it there.
I see.
And here again, I'm computer illiterate. A friend of mine
doing a great job now.
Well, a friend of mine set this up. I just want you to know that I wouldn't have a clue.
He did a great job.
Thank you.
You look great. So they go to bobeubanks.com. They can get your book. And
I'm getting ready to do Beatles shows. I've been hired by the wonderful people, the Distinguished Speakers Group. And I put together a Beatles show called Backstage with the Beatles. And I tell never or seldom before heard stories that lead up to music, and I have a Beatle band on stage with me. Oh. So I'm going to do Long Beach, Thousand Oaks, Beverly Hills, Pasadena, and Redondo Beach starting next week for the Distinguished Speakers. And I'm very proud to be part of them.
Oh, is that fantastic, Bob? I love hearing that you're doing that. That's really cool. By the way, I saw one other interview where you had all these like Beatles posters or something that you had created on your own, but this was from way back when they came to the Hollywood Bowl. Are those still available? I mean, can
Yes,
people
they
still
are.
get those?
They're still available. And here again, if you go onto my website, you can find about. I believe I had 1,000 printed, and they all come with a letter of authenticity. There'll never be any more. And I've sold them at a lot of my Beatles shows. I can't sell them at distinguished speakers this time, but here again, you can find me. And let me just say this too. If anybody ever wants me to record a video for someone, for them, birthday, whatever special event, if you go to Cameo, and log into that Cameo, and then find my name and log in there and request what you want, and then I will send a video to those people.
Okay, fantastic. Last thing, and I do this with every guest I have on the show, I just open it to, is there any charitable organizations or anything that you feel strongly about that you like, if people are interested, this means, this particular organization is something that you like to give to or have over the years or been involved
talking to
with?
a very Christian gentleman. My wife and I, we donate to our churches, and it's important to us. So.
Okay, great. That's exactly, because people always want to know that, like what means something to you. That's great. Well, Bob, listen, thank you. Really, thank you so much for being on. And it was wonderful talking to you. I look forward to the book. Any sense of when that might happen? That book might get a release?
No, and I'm going to call the podcast "Short Stories About Big People," but the book will be coming out. But I got so much to do right now with it. These Beatles things coming up and everything.
Well,
I'm very blessed.
You are blessed, and we look forward to the podcast. I will listen to it. I promise you. That sounds really cool.
Well, my oldest son travels with me, does all of my audio visual. I have another son who lives in Texas, who is the #1 stunt driver in the industry.
Wow.
And I have my oldest is 63 and my youngest is 19.
Wow. What a life.
I look so old.
Bob, it's been a pleasure. I thank you very much for being on the show.
My pleasure too. Thank you very much, and God bless.
God bless to you too. As always, thanks for listening, and please hit the subscription button and the notification bell so that you can be notified when I have a new episode. And also go check out some of my other episodes, like Jerry Mathers, Henry Winkler, Judy Norton, so many. Enjoy.